Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from GreenSpark Solar, serving the greater Rochester and Finger Lakes regions for over 20 years. GreenSpark Solar is dedicated to helping people power their homes and businesses with local solar power and battery storage backup. More at greensparksolar.com. And Bob Johnson Auto Group, proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson, believing an informed public makes for a stronger community. BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour will be made at the polls starting this weekend. Early voting in the Democratic primary begins on Saturday. And one of the races primary voters will see on their ballot in Rochester is the Rochester City School Board. There are 4 candidates in the primary vying for 3 seats. The number of candidates is markedly different than in previous years. Last year's primary included 7 candidates, but this year, former board president Cynthia Elliott chose not to run again, and 2 other candidates, current board member James Patterson and a new candidate, Trenton Jackson Jr., did not gain the required number of signatures to make the ballot. Patterson has since said he plans to run on the independent line. This hour, we bring you the 4 candidates on the ballot in this primary season so you can understand what they would like to do if they become commissioners or if they are reelected as commissioners. Let me welcome the candidates now. And going right around the room, Kareem McCullough, candidate for Rochester City School Board, on Facebook at Kareem McCullough. Welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Next to Kareem is Heather Feinman, a candidate for Rochester City School Board. HeatherFeinman.com, Feinman. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for spelling that.
Across from Heather is Camille Simmons, candidate for Rochester City School Board, the current president of the board, on Facebook at Camille for the Rochester City School Board. Welcome back to the program. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
And Vince Felder, candidate for Rochester City School Board. VinceFelder.com. Vince, welcome back to you. Thanks for being here.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
I would like to ask everybody why they want to do this, why you want to run for this particular position, a little bit about yourself, your background, and what has motivated this run. We'll go around. We'll start with Vince in the corner and we'll come around the table. Go ahead, Vince.
Well, for me, been studying the school district for over 20 years and have seen the challenges that we've had educating our children, and understanding the correlation between illiteracy and poverty, and then between poverty and crime and the other things that come along. I believe that it's necessary. It's been necessary, but it's certainly at this point in time necessary to fix this district for the long term so that we can really move this community forward in terms of getting people educated, getting people employed, eliminating poverty, particularly child poverty. We still have one of the highest child poverty rates in the country, and you're really not going to be able to do that without educating our children. And we know the perils of, particularly, we'll get into that later, about not teaching our children to read by 3rd grade and the results of that, the negative effects of that. So for me, it's saying that let's turn this thing around and really move in a good direction. I think we got some good people running and people on the board now who have the right idea, but I think we need a good critical mass of board members to really be able to make the long-term systemic changes that need to be made in that district.
All right. Camille Simmons.
Yeah, thank you, Evan. Getting into education, it's something I've been around for over 15 years here in Rochester, starting as a youth advocate, working inside Rochester City School District schools with high school students on academic performance, some of their life situations, so seeing exactly firsthand what's happening, going into the homes of those students and working alongside their parents is how I started my work. So this was a natural progression in my way of serving that led me to the school board, and I am really committed to education, as you know. Likened to Vince, the focus on literacy is a passion of mine. I do believe literacy is a foundation of education, and also bringing in leadership skills, strategic leadership skills, are things that I believe I can influence on the board to get the board moving in a direction that will be more beneficial for the students here in the Rochester City School District. So bringing my passion back and hoping to continue that work.
Heather Feinman.
I'm a lived experience parent. I have 7 kids that went through the district. 4 of them are gone. Not all of them graduated. 1 left the district. 3 did not graduate. They're still working on things like that. I have 3 still in the district. And I came across barriers every step of the way. And every time I find a barrier, I look for a solution. So when it got to the point where I didn't have any more places to go, I was told to run for school board, and I'm ready to take on the challenges. I know that there's a lot that needs to be done. There's a lot of potential. There's a lot of really good changes already happening. We need to uplift families and keep going. We need to make policy changes to make sure that things are going in the right direction.
And Kareem McCullough.
So for me, I'm a Rochester native, graduate from Benjamin Franklin. I am 20 years in education as a educator, as a master teacher, a special education coordinator, as well as a principal, and a global educator at that. And so since I've been back here in Rochester, I've noticed that our school board is not where it used to be. It's not doing the things that it could be doing to help our community or our students. So my goal was to join and to start holding people accountable for what is needed. Start allowing the superintendent to do his job and start creating policy that's for the students and for the community and for the parents and for the schools that are going to actually create the type of graduates we want to see come out of Rochester. So I'm joining to help with that initiative, to help with that, and bringing my educational background and my educational expertise to the board to be a skill set that's not yet there, and to combine with what's there to create a better future.
So let's start with that point, and I'll start with you, Kareem, and go back around the table here. You mentioned that from your perspective, this is a board that is not functioning where you want it to function. Maybe it's not functioning as well as it maybe used to decades ago. Although I don't know if people if that would be debate. I don't know. But Kareem, let me start with you by asking. Tell me more about what you mean by when you talk about you want to join this board and hold people to account. You want to see the kind of work that you don't see getting done. What is not getting done? What is happening that is bothering you?
So one of the things that I would say has bothered me as I've looked at what was going on with the board is the not cohesive manner that the board seems to operate from. We are elected officials. They are going to be elected officials who have a job to do. And they're being brought there for work. And the work is to ensure that the board, that our school district, that our community, that our children have functional, working, stable adults that are going to actually create policies and ensure that the superintendent and his cabinet and his role can be done. I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing arguments. I'm seeing dysfunction. I'm seeing people with hidden agendas. I'm seeing things happen that are not in the best interest of our students.
But aren't arguments part of any board? Aren't disagreements part of any board?
Disagreements are. Arguments, incohesive, not willing to collaborate, that's not. As adults, especially as leaders in the community, our goal is to work together so that we can actually strengthen our youth who will one day take over these positions. Is this the leadership? Is this the example we want to lead them to? Let me give you a quick example. I was at a board meeting one time, and this was this past year, and a group of students came from Edison to see, it was part of their civics class. And one of the reasons why they said they were interested in coming in person was to see the arguments. That is the narrative that's being brought out. That wasn't there when I was a student. So I wanted to be able to change that narrative and get it back to its function, which is to govern and create policies so that the superintendent and his board and his cupboard can do what they need to do.
Heather Feynman, what's your view of how the board is functioning?
Board isn't functioning. And I agree with Kareem. We have to make sure that the board does function. We have to be the role models. We have to take the lead and be the example. I work a lot in policy. I work with the kids a lot. We've formed the League of Future Voters. I work with the Cub Scouts. I work with the Boy Scouts. And I show and engage and teach in civic engagement all of the time. I work on another board. We had someone come in and explain what it means to be a board, explain our roles. That's all we had to do. And then we started moving forward. We didn't need 3 years. We were able to work together. The policy changes that need to take place for the children. And we need to listen to the children. We need to listen to the parents, and we need to let them have voice. And it is our job to create the policies so that everything can function normally.
Camille Simmons, as president of the board, do you think the board is functioning optimally?
Well, being on the show a few times now, Evan, one of the things you have to acknowledge is the dysfunction of the board. If you were to describe it as anything less, then it would not be. I would not be truthful. It is a dysfunctional school board, and that is one of the reasons I chose to step in when the opportunity was provided to lead in a way that I do believe mirrors the things that my colleagues have expressed. It is important, to your point, to be able to have discourse in a way that is still respectable to your colleagues. We can disagree, and that's okay. But if we allow those disagreements to get in our way of functioning, get in our way of focusing on children and creating policy and ensuring that the outcomes that we're working toward are being met, then we are failing our community. When your personal agenda or personal grievances get in the way of that, you have to then do some self-reflection and determine, am I serving my community who's voted me in for a paid elected position? Am I doing the work that I was called to do? And if your answer is no, reconsider serving on the board. Because it's time out. Our community is tired. Our children are not doing well. How are the children doing? They are not well. And it starts with the board, as I've said before.
Vince Felder, what do you think?
Well, what we've seen this year is really something that came out into the public that's been going on behind closed doors for a long time. And that's why you've seen the dysfunction. That's why we've seen the lack of results, the lack of ability to keep a superintendent. The instability doesn't start in the administration. It starts at the board level. And you need board members, one, who have integrity and say, look, I was elected by the people, so I'm going to serve the people. So there's no other outside entity. There's no faction of parents or anybody else, even though we serve the parents. I mean, groups, the different kind of groups that we're going to allow to manipulate us, that's caused part of the problem. And also, just as an adult, and we try to tell our children how to act. And how you tell a child, to employ conflict resolution, learn to respect each other's boundaries, don't mistreat people, respect others, and then we as adults, in public acting crazy. And so I think I think it's on the individuals, of the board members, to say, look, we're going to hold ourselves to a standard, and when the public sees that, obviously that's not somebody who should be on the board. Now, not to say people can't make mistakes and learn from that and grow and move forward, but it should not be a constant pattern of that kind of behavior, because that speaks to something else. And the challenges are too great that we have to be arguing with each other over stuff, particularly when it's personal stuff, and it's getting in the way of business. Because when you have the rates that we have, the graduation rate, the literacy rates and other things, the math proficiency rates and those things, we have other things to deal with rather than that. And I think that's one unfortunate things to see is it spill over into the public, and now the public can see just what's been going on for a long time. The board has operated it's always operated in a divided fashion. One of the ideas is I only need 4 votes. And so what you've had is you had a faction of 4 people get to say, I got my 4 votes, and basically I'm not going to cuss. Forget everybody else. And so those 3 people now they have an issue. So now if they get a chance to get power, now they come in and dynamic change in the other factions. We have to find a way to try to build more of a consensus model on the board where we actually are working together. We know everything's not going to be the way we want it individually, but collectively we can come up with a good idea.
Did you edit yourself live on the air just like that?
Yes, I almost said something in that.
That was very
I didn't want
impressive.
my pastor to be questioning.
That was very impressive. You're hearing the candidates for Rochester City School Commissioner Vince Felder, Camille Simmons, Heather Feynman, Kareem McCullough, all with us. Heather mentioned creating policy for the children, not letting adult agendas dominate, not letting strife dominate, creating policy for the children. But let's be more specific than that. What does policy for the children look like for you?
We have a lot of children that are hurting right now. We have children that have trauma that most people are not even aware of. When you walk into the schools, you see things that are happening, and children who are not going to school. They're not going to school because they have trauma. We have to uplift those families. We have to figure out what the problem is, find solutions, and make policy for that.
And is there an example that stands out that says this is what a specific item that we could do that these kids need that they're not getting right now?
Well, mental health, for one. I mean, I have a child who was misgendered repeatedly, purposefully, horribly. I have children.
By peers?
No, by the staff.
By the staff.
By the staff.
Okay.
I have a child that I met at the library. I spent a lot of time at our library, who was devastated when she witnessed her teacher be hit by a car. Nothing was addressed. No one even spoke to the children. No mental health was brought in at all. If it doesn't make the news, it doesn't happen. And we need to fix that. We need to work on mental health and supporting our children.
Camille Simmons, what does policy for the children look like to you?
Policy means that we want to take a look at some of the goals that we've established as a board, right? Because the board sets the vision. We are what comes from the head trickles down into the district. So looking at our goals, the needs of our district, and the outcomes that we wish to see. So what I see is us identifying policies that will, again, align with our board goals and resources that are needed in our school district. And if we are doing that, those things can also be informed through our parent voice, through our student voice, as far as those needs. I think if we sit in a bubble as a board and simply have just that conversation, we miss a lot of opportunities. People will often hear me say, you sit in these high spaces, but when you've missed the opportunity to lean into the community, the people that you serve, that is where you get the answers. The people closest to the issue are the people with the solution. So we've got to galvanize community voice to help inform the decisions around policy making.
Vince Felder, what is policy with children in mind?
I think, excuse me. Well, I believe the children have to be the focus of everything we do, because they're ultimately affected by the decisions that we make, and everything we should do is grounded in the idea of how do we educate these children. And so you have to have community involvement, particularly like we're talking about literacy, particularly in literacy. Literacy has to be a community-wide thing. It can't just be in a district. You know, but yes, we can teach them in the schools, and we should be, but also our libraries, our churches, wherever our children are being are at home. There has to be a community buy-in to what we're doing and a connection to what we're doing. You see it like now, in for example, this summer, I think the city is participating in the program where they're, at least I know in one of the schools in 22 on the east side, they're bringing some children in for the summer for a literacy project. So so during the summer they'll actually get some literacy training, which helps with learning loss. One of the things we talk about. So I think those kind of things, and the district creating those kind of partnerships with the community to make sure that we are doing those things.
I know we're going to go back to Camille wants to jump back in. Let me get Kareem as well here. Go ahead.
Okay, so for me, child-centered policy is, first, it's child-centered. That's the first and foremost part about it. Second, it needs to follow district goals. I know Camille mentioned that. It needs to have aligned with district goals and strategic goals that were already set in place. In addition to that, you want to make sure that they're strategic. You want to make sure that they're evidence-based and they're research-based. We want to ensure that what we're doing is we're not just pulling for straws, but we're doing actual things, creating actual policy that has worked. There is no reason to reinvent the wheels at this point. We want to start using things that have worked, that is evidence that it's worked. It's worked in other places, in other districts with similar demographics, and we can actually use it, adopt it here, and continue on so that we can create the type of students and graduates that we want to see come out of Rochester.
You want to add something there, Camille?
Yeah, I love what Kareem just mentioned, Kareem McCullough mentioned around the evidence and research, because oftentimes, even when we consider our curriculum, folks are talking about something being research-based. And I was informed by Kareem Weaver from the Right to Read documentary. I followed that man because of my passion for literacy and wanting to see our students read on grade level. I went around and just sat where I could to hear from him, and he said, make sure it is evidence-based, not just the research. And so I'm happy to hear that. And to Mr. Felder's point around Read Alliance is the initiative with the city, and and the opportunity to work, because this is going to be a full community situation. We need, thus goes the county, thus goes the city, right? Based on the how we create the foundation for education in Rochester. And so that was Patterson, Mike Patterson from the city reached out, said, hey, I've got an idea, I've got an opportunity, Read Alliance. What do you say? Absolutely. So we were able to partner and really get students on board, and we will be having that reading program this summer. So I'm very excited to see that happen.
Go ahead, Heather. Yep.
We also need to make sure we keep our community involved. My children have been involved in Quad A and Quad B through Encompass all summer long. They always have all kinds of initiatives that we make sure that our children are actively involved in the summer. It's important, but that's community-based. And we just need to make sure we're bringing all of the opportunities and resources that we have for our children into the families to uplift them.
And it's not just bringing them in; it's also holding them accountable for their part of educating our children. You know, and the city's been good, been trying for years to do some things, but we want to make sure that everybody, the county, you know, we talk about Heather's talking about mental health. You know, we have an office of mental health here in the county that should be working with the district proactively to make sure our children who've been dealing with a lot of trauma even before COVID, but certainly after COVID, they should be in our schools. And it shouldn't cost the district anything for it to happen. You know, and this things we need in terms of social work and those things, we need to create those kind of partnerships, and because these are their children as well. They're not just Rochester's children.
To be fair, anything you want to add there, Kareem? Yeah.
Real quick, everyone is saying wonderful things, and one of the things we do want to mirror, I want to mirror with what all of them have said, was the community. We have to ensure that the community actually understands their role and what it means to play a part in what these initiatives are and what these things are that we're trying to do as a board, right? So we want to ensure that we're educating the community as well. They need that education because you have parents and you have other members in the community who don't know their role or don't know how they can contribute into these things. So part of that is really going out and saying, hey, this is what your role is. This is what I need for you to do in your place and in your space so that you can encourage and help with these initiatives and these research and evidence-based programs that we're trying to do.
Go ahead briefly. Yep.
The problem is right now there are policies that don't allow community into the schools. That's one of the first policies we have to address because we have programs that reach out to the schools and say, let us do this. And we say, we can't. I've been there. We can't do this. We can't do that.
Okay, so let me take a phone call, and then we're gonna turn our attention to a number of other issues with the candidates for Rochester City School Board. This is Howie calling. Hi, Howie. Go ahead.
Hi. So I'm very glad that we have energetic people wanting to serve, to live in Rochester. Unfortunately, I live in Brighton, so I can't serve on the board, although I would love to. But my question for each of these candidates is, how active would you be in engaging with charter schools, the 10,000 plus students that are in charter schools? How active would you be on a regular basis, I'm going to say monthly, during your term to learn how they are educating those students and why they are succeeding more than the dysfunction that the Rochester City School Board and the administration, including the teachers union, for 35 years has allowed Rochester to deteriorate to an unbelievably poor level. So I'm wondering if you're willing to make a commitment as a new board member to engage with charters on a regular basis, like monthly, to make a difference and learn.
All right, Howie, thank you for the phone call. I'm going to start with Camille Simmons on this. We'll go around the table. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so I appreciate Mr. Howie's question. You know, and even during my designation period, I expressed that I actually worked in a charter for a few months. It was short-lived, although I did appreciate the experience. And so I got to see firsthand how one of the schools here functioned, at least. I think that having conversation and looking at different models are important. I also think there has to be a level-setting conversation around the reality of outcomes that we're looking at.
What do you mean by that?
So what I mean by that is there are some charters that are very, very successful, and those are charters or schools that I think it would be great, and we should have conversations around the nuances of how they're educating students, right? There's opportunity anywhere, and you should be able to have a conversation. We also want to look at the reality that not all charter schools are outperforming district schools, and sometimes what gets lost in these conversations is that we look at the district in this bubble, right? And we look at the graduation rate in a bubble, but if you were to aggregate or disaggregate some of that data, you would see that there's some schools that are 98% graduation rates, 70%, right? So to focus on the question at hand, I think there's an opportunity to have conversations. I've already had a few. So I don't know if I would be able to do a monthly conversation. I won't get that granular with my commitment, but I do have a commitment to see children win in Rochester, and I'm focused on their education.
Vince Felder?
Yeah, you know, charter schools are obviously very controversial, and I think the reality is the reality. They're here, and they have a lot of our children in their schools. Some of them are better. Some are better than others, but certainly the ones that are doing well, we can learn some things from. But they also have a different set of rules in some cases. There are things they can do that the district can't. So we have to there's a certain level of reality in those things. But I think any chance to learn another way, or to see an opportunity to to observe another way of doing things is certainly worthwhile to do. Like I said, but it's not always apples to apples when you make the comparison, because there are things that we have to do that they don't have to do, and we have to be realistic about some of that. But we certainly should be looking to learn, and when if possible, in some cases collaborate. But I make the main focus of school board members is the city school district.
Okay, Kareem McCullough?
So when I think about that question, I think about there needs to be a deeper conversation that needs to happen. The current relationship between charter and the district schools, and the charter community and the district community it's a headbutting conversation. It's a headbutting relationship. And so we can't just run into, let's just start working with them. There needs to be more conversations to happen to even grow that relationship. Now, to be full transparent, I was a charter school principal. So I've worked in a lot of different models: private, charter, public, district, online. So I've had these experiences. So each model comes with benefits, but each model also comes with some ineffective treatments as well. So one thing I would like to see happen, though, is as an educator, we for lack of words, we steal from each other. You do something good in your class, I'm going to do what you're doing in my class. You're doing something good in your class, I'm going to take that and do what's good in my class as well. We have that across the district, not just in charter schools. So what I feel one of the things that we should be focusing on is looking at what's being done well in these other spaces, not just district schools, not just charter schools, but looking at what's being done well and bringing it into our schools to attract our students, to give our students more opportunities, more perspectives of what effective learning is going to look like. And it can come from anywhere. It doesn't just have to come from charter schools. So deeper conversation before we can move into this full-on collaboration. I am completely open for that. But we have to start at a point where we're looking at our district schools and getting our graduates and getting our students where we need them to be.
Heather Feynman.
I'm going to say my child was in a charter school, and we removed her because it was not as successful. It was not as holistic as she needed it to be. In the district, we have the resources to wrap around for a holistic child. And I'm going to say, as a board member, I know that Kareem was working with charter schools. So I want to lean in on his knowledge and say, this is why we have board members. I'm a lived experience parent. You're a lived in educator. I'm going to say, what do you know? How can you bring your knowledge to the board to help us? Do we want to bring in other ideas? Absolutely. And teachers sell paperwork online. If you're looking for an idea, Teachers Pay Teachers is a whole website where you can get all kinds of beautiful information. They share it every day. We need to embrace other ideas, take everything in. And yes, do we need to have conversations? You're right. We do. But we're a long way from having monthly conversations. I'd like to lean into the expertise of the fellow board members to make sure that we're bringing all the ideas to the table, but we have to do what's best for the kids.
And I will say real quick, Evan, is that I recently spoke to a local charter leader, and to Kareem's point, expressed that exact piece, that we need to have a level-setting conversation and understanding where the district stands, where charter stands, and how do we bridge that communication in a way that's going to be beneficial versus adversarial.
But part of the problem.
Go ahead, Vince. Yep.
Sorry. Part of the problem is that the way the model is set up automatically creates acrimony. You have a charter school gets The money for the charter school comes out of the school district budget.
147 million for transportation.
Then by the same token, charter schools are operating about 55-60% of the dollar the district gets. So you automatically have a negative situation set up by the very way the program was designed. And I think one of the things that we need to advocate for is trying to clean that up. So that the district is not, if the state wants to fund charter schools, the state should fund the charter schools without it affecting the district. Because the reality of it is the district still has to deal with the kids who are there. And the things the district sometimes could do to really mirror some of the things the charter schools do, lower class size and other things they can't do because the money is going out the door. And so if we can find another way to fund charter schools, one of the things we need to look at look at AIM-AID and why the formula's gotten better, but it's still not as good. And we still not AIM. Foundation Aid.
Foundation Aid.
Think about
Foundation
the city.
Yep.
my state legislature experience. The Foundation Aid. If we can clean that up, and actually the district gets the amount of Foundation Aid it needs, and then you find another way to take some money and fund the charter schools, then we can fix this problem. But I think there's always going to be a certain level of contention because of the way it's designed. Because when the kids leave, the money leaves, and so that's always going to be an issue.
But they also, charter schools can just dismiss children. I have a child that she was permanently suspended from her charter school. She bounced back to the district. So they can do whatever they want. They have different set of rules. So this is a beautiful child willing to learn, had a problem. Nobody looked at the issue of the problem or what was going on. And she's suspended from the charter school. So she's back in the district where she will succeed because I will uplift this child and this family and she will succeed. But one of the reasons the charter schools are so perfect, if you want to say that in some world, is because they can do whatever they want. You're not on our list of what we need, you're dismissed.
And I will say this is why there needs to be more conversations and deeper understandings of these two different models. And so that a lot of the misinformation that's there can be dismissed and people can actually listen and know how to move forward with informed decisions, with informed information and things that actually exist and not what we've been told.
And get to the foundation of learning.
Yes.
Because if we are able to work through those middle ground areas and get to the foundation of learning, our children will benefit.
We have to take our only break of the hour. We've got a lot more to talk about with the candidates for Rochester City School Board. Kareem McCullough, Heather Feynman, Camille Simmons, Vince Felder, all with us. Let's take that only break and come right back on Connections.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Mary Cariola Center, providing education and life skills solutions designed to empower individuals and the families of those with complex disabilities. Mary Cariola Center, transforming lives of people with disabilities. More at marycariola.org.
This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Some students and families, and certainly some members of the Rochester City School Board, have expressed concerns about the behavior of ICE in our community, possible concerns that students and their parents may have about sending students to school. We know that there have been some issues through this spring about kids and their families deciding, do we even send the kids at all? I want to start with Vince Felder here. What do you see as the board's and the district's role in this situation? Do you think it's being handled appropriately?
I think so. I think our job is to protect our students and our families. I obviously don't agree with what's going on with ICE. I think immigrants have been scapegoated in a very negative way. If you look at the majority of immigrants in this country, legal or illegal, documented or undocumented, I don't want to use the word illegal, they work hard, they're law-abiding citizens, and they contribute to America. And I think because of white supremacy and xenophobia and it's that there's a desire to scapegoat them in an effort to find somebody else to blame for what's going on in this country. And it's unfortunate. And particularly when you start targeting children, children are innocent. Even the parents came here not necessarily the right way. The children had no control over that. And so I think it just shows a heartlessness and a cruelty that really does not speak to who we claim we are as Americans. And so certainly as a board member, I'm committed to making sure that we continue to protect our children from ICE. We don't, we're not going to be allowing them in the schools and all that stuff. That's not going to be happening.
Okay, Kareem?
Just like Vincent Felder said, I am in complete agreement with that. Like, we have to protect our children. I believe that this State Attorney General, Letitia James, she sent down to the states and to the schools and to the government agencies what to do if ICE showed up. And that was to keep our safe havens, to keep our schools, to keep our rec centers, to keep these spaces safe for the families and the children that they serve. And that we were not going to give in to the demands of what is happening from the federal level. And I am a proponent of that. I will stick with that. I will support that. And I have no issues voicing that as advocacy for our children and making sure we keep our safe havens safe.
Heather Feynman?
Absolutely. I was at the Attorney General Summit when Letitia James was talking about the language access and making sure that our children were safe. And these were brought up continuously. Again, the mandate has been brought down. The schools are doing a great job, the rec centers. We cannot control what happens at the bus station. We cannot control what happens on the way to school. And that's where the fear comes in. So we need to make sure that people know that our schools are safe, that we're not letting people in the door. We're not letting them take our children. And we just need to make sure, again, we need to uplift our families and communicate with our families. And as long as we're doing that, our children are safe in schools.
Camille Simmons?
Yes, I was very pleased to see the interim superintendent Strickland's response to the federal threats that came in concerning ICE and how it may impact students. And one thing I can say is that the Rochester City School District took a firm stance on that. The understanding was not debatable. We were not confused. We are going to protect our children, and immediately went into action under guidance through lawyers and things of that nature on how to enact a process that will ensure our educators, our children, our families, and everyone understood what would happen should ICE show up at those school doors. To Heather's point, unfortunately, it's a broader community issue where we have to galvanize around our other government partners to effectuate change in those areas. But at the Rochester City School District, you're not walking in those buildings. We're not sending a child out to you, and I'm pleased about that.
Mm-hmm. An email from Maggie. Maggie wants to know if the candidates for the school board will support police in schools where there have been high incidents. She calls it incidents of safety incidents. I'm sure she means incidents of violence, things like that. So I'll start with Kareem McCullough. Police in schools, Kareem.
So I'm going to go back to schools being safe havens. There has been a lot of evidence. There's been a lot of incidents. Not necessarily, not just in Rochester, but across the country, where having police in buildings have actually made those schools feel less safe for those who are there to be safe. I would need to know more research, more evidence to support police being in our buildings. We have SOS, we have security, we have trainings, they have places and spaces. We've seen some of the amazing things that they have done in our buildings. I don't know if having police actually there is the right answer to that. I don't think having the students feel as if they're going into a institution as opposed to a place of learning is the best way to create the type of graduates and the type of citizens we want to see come out of RCSD.
Heather?
I am absolutely opposed to police in our school district. Like you said, you don't want a child walking in where they feel like they're in an institution. And I'm a doctor by training. I don't go to a surgeon, if I have a small problem, because a surgeon has a knife, a cop has a gun. You use the tools you have. We do not need police in our schools. Our SSO people that we have, our resource officers, they make connections with these kids. They are making safe havens for our kids. We need to make sure that, again, our schools are safe havens and that our children feel safe. The things that happen outside of the schools, that's a whole nother problem. But again, it goes back to community. We have to uplift the community, uplift the families, and galvanize the community to make sure that outside of our schools are safe, but our kids are safe in schools, and they don't need police officers.
Camille?
Yes, so I believe in building relationship. I think that there's an opportunity for our children or students to look at law enforcement as a potential career direction if they're so interested. I believe there's an opportunity for community and police relationships, building that. That needs to happen. There's a bridge there. As far as police in schools, I do not support that, and that's always been my position, and that's something I can speak very stern about, if you will. And I have great relationships with law enforcement, but I don't believe law enforcement needs to be in our buildings. I believe that we have the opportunity to build on safety in schools, but that does not have to be solved by having a police officer in a school.
And Vince Felder.
Yeah, no, I'm not in favor of police in schools. I think it sends the wrong message to our children. And when we had police in schools, you had a couple of unfortunate incidents, I believe, where like 8, 9-year-olds got arrested for just acting up in class, and I don't see it as a necessary thing. I think what we do is we do a better job when our children are younger with behavior. We're teaching them how to behave and getting them in the right frame of mind when they come to school, and working with their parents and make sure we have good children who behave properly. And that will help with the safety aspects in terms of the teachers and other students as they get older. But the idea of and you have the resource officers and safety officers in the schools to help when something happens. But actually, uniformed, armed police officers, not.
And if I can just piggyback off of what Camille Simmons said, is that if we want to build bridges and relationships, and in the sense of career development, those type of things, that is a wonderful idea. Those are wonderful ways to bring different people and police officers in general into the buildings. But as everyone else said, we are not proponents of having them in the buildings.
Sam in Rochester emails to say, Evan, I'd like to hear the candidates' thoughts on how the board and the superintendent can work together and, for lack of better words, ensure some stability in the RCSD. As a resident and RCSD parent, I'm deeply troubled by the turnover in the superintendent position, and I find it difficult to be optimistic that anything will be different with Dr. Rosser than it has been with the previous many superintendents. It's extremely discouraging to see so many leaders come and go in such a short period of time, and I'd love to hear how these candidates believe they can help change this pattern. That is Sam in Rochester. I'm going to start with Heather Feynman. Just a note here, the official start day is July 1 for Dr. Rosser, Eric J. Rosser, but we haven't met Dr. Rosser. I'm sure he'll be on this program soon.
Yes, he will.
But he's been in this community. I know he's been working. He's been in touch with many people. So the official start's coming up here, but that hire has been made. Heather, what would you say to Sam, who says, what can the board do to work with a superintendent? And I'll start by asking you to maybe characterize this. Do you think the board is the reason that we've lost a lot of superintendents in a short amount of time?
I was told that was the reason, and that's why I needed to run for school board. So if I wanted to fix the problem, it was the board that was the problem, so I needed to get on it.
So what can the board do now to work with the superintendent effectively?
Well, the new superintendent is, like we said, he's already come into the community. So, Sam, go to one of his meetings. He's incredible. He takes notes. He's listening. He's bought a house here in the city. He is committed. He's already working. Every time I've gone to any of these meetings, Camila's already been there, or another Amy has already been there. He's already working with the board. And like Kareem has said, we need to make sure that we are doing our part so he can do his job. He wants to listen to the community. He's already set up fireside chats. I love that. I steal that. That's a Cub Scout thing. And we want to get into the community, lean into the community. He's already listening. He is also an impacted person. He understands the community. I love that. I'm so excited to be working with him.
Okay, Camille Simmons?
Yeah, I'm excited about Dr. Rosser, as you know. And as far as foundationally, I think there's a multitude of reasons our superintendents don't persist in the Rochester City School District. But when you want to go back to that common denominator, I would have to say the board. And I've been very transparent around that. And part of that issue is historically, I mean, you can go back decades, the dysfunction of the board that is played out almost like a reality TV show is embarrassing and problematic. And at some point, again, you've got to go to have a mirror talk with yourself and ask yourself, should I be here? Am I serving students any longer, or am I serving myself? That's just a real conversation. And I have to ask myself that, because it's frustrating to be there. And one thing that I pride myself in is not becoming part of that discord in a way that's problematic. I will not disparage my colleagues openly. I've been on this show. You've asked me some tough questions. You will not hear me disparage my colleagues openly on a show. I will not, I'm not looking to take pot shots. What I am looking to do is find that common ground. And those are the things that get in the way of superintendents. When we're focusing on each other and our lack of understanding around board governance, right? So that micromanagement of superintendents, that pulling them like a rag doll in multiple directions for a school district that has multiple issues, is not going to help them be successful. Our board needs to rally around true governance and focus around goals.
Vince Felder?
Well, there have been several things. I think some of the superintendents we've chosen in the past have been chosen for the wrong reasons. I know from being told that certain superintendents were chosen because certain board members or the teachers union thought they could control them, and they manipulated the processes in that regard. We've had superintendents who've been dismissed because the teachers union issued a vote of no confidence against them, and all of a sudden, after that, the board all of a sudden decided they couldn't do their job anymore. So we have to understand as a board what our responsibility is to the voters, and we cannot allow ourselves to be manipulated to be part of a process where we're part of the problem. We're creating instability in the board. The other thing is, the superintendent may work for the board, but the superintendent does not work for individual board members. So we should not be calling in with our little pet project. Not that there shouldn't be there shouldn't be a mechanism when we have issues or parents bring to us that we can get to them, but we should not be. He should not be getting 7 phone calls a day, from people saying, hey, do this, do that, do that, do that. That's because we speak with a collective voice. Obviously, the president has that ability because of the nature of her role. But so I think we have to look at and understanding what our job is, but also understanding that our job as a board is to create stability. When Dr. Aquino issued his distinguished educator report, the first thing he said is the board is the problem. And we don't want to be the problem. We shouldn't be the problem.
Kareem McCullough.
Oh, so many great things were said already. So first and foremost, I think the board needs to clearly understand what their role is. What is the board's role? And they need to understand what that is. And once that happens, then we need to give the superintendent, Dr. Rosser, his autonomy to do his job. He was brought in, he was hired to run the district from operationals level. Let him do that. Third, I would like to see that, we actually advise him as opposed to telling him what to do, or like Vince said, call him, they thinking he's a one person's hire. No, we actually leverage the board members' skill sets and actually use that to advise him on what it is that we feel as a collective should be happening. And then from there, I would say we'd start to build the policy that he needs to make this district, to make his job effective and this district successful. And that only comes with the collaboration and understanding of what our roles are.
All right, I got one more question. Does anybody disagree on anything on this group here? What do you guys fight about when no one's around? I mean, you guys have agreed on a lot.
You know why?
It's a pretty unified group.
You know why we can agree on so much is because there's so many things that need to be improved. There's so many things that we see as a collective, as a community, that we're like, okay, we are all understanding where our board and where our district is at. So it makes it hard to say, no, you're not right. You're not right, Heather, or Camille, that's not, because we all see it.
Well, the reality is that we know what the problems are. They've been here forever. So it's not a question of it. So it's easy to agree on the problems, and even we know what some of the solutions are, but for whatever reason, some of them haven't been implemented.
Mm-hmm. And as we dig into those solutions, we're not going to always agree on how we approach it, but I'd much rather be disagreeing and having some passionate discord around the solution that we're focused on and how that solution can help children win versus the other mess that we see that puts us on the front of a paper for all the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. So I'll have discourse any day if we're talking about children winning in Rochester.
You better say that.
Respectful discourse. When I was petitioning, the first question and most often asked question is, are you sure you want to do this? And I said, I have to. I have kids in the district. I have to do this for my Cub Scouts, my kids in the district. I'm the neighborhood mama. All the kids come to me, and I have to do this for them.
But you feed them, Heather.
Martha, watching on the YouTube page for WXXI News, says, loving how collaborative and supportive the guests are with each other, already an improvement from the current board. That is from Martha. And in our last minute, Richard had called in with a question. He wanted to know if the guests will support the BAM program, Becoming a Man. That is not a program I'm instantly familiar with. Is that one that's currently operating, Camille Simmons?
I would have to dig into and look at that. I'm willing to have some additional conversation to learn more.
Yeah, it's a program for black males in the district. They're bringing up black men raising black males. It's a powerful project. One of the things we need to uplift in the community is our black fathers. It's hard to get them engaged in the classroom. I've gone out to the playground and said, come on in. We're having a meeting. You're here already. They feel that they're not welcome, and they need to know that they're welcome.
The district tried to do something, to your point, Heather, around having fathers come in school. There was something, I forget the town or state it happened in, but it was very well received. The fathers actually came into the schools. They were part of the community, and they modeled things. They gave the children this visual. Rochester always does its own thing, and I don't think it was as successful. I think we need to revisit that and make that successful.
And I'm part of a fraternity. I know we go into schools, and some of the other ones, I'm the Kappa, the Omegas, the Alphas, Sigmas. We have programs where we actually go and help with the young men in the schools.
If I could have 10 seconds.
Go ahead.
Part of what Heather said, the BAM is also My Brother's Keeper. So, it comes through that initiative as well. So that's a way that we can actually keep our young men and our fathers involved in the process.
Maybe a conversation for a separate day. I appreciate that call, Richard. And I want to thank the candidates. Hey, they can't all be on the Democratic Party line. Voters are going to have to choose in this primary season. Early voting starts on Saturday. Primary election day is Tuesday, June 24th. Kareem McCullough on Facebook at Kareem McCullough, candidate for Rochester City School Board. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Vince Felder, vincefelder.com. Thank you for being here, Vince.
Thank you.
Camille Simmons on Facebook at Camille's A. Simmons for the Rochester City School Board. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Heather Feinman, heatherfeinman.com, Feinman. Thank you for being here, Heather.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
More connections coming up.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.